They say Formula One is a sport of secrets, but sometimes those secrets get confiscated. In our previous video, we told you how the FIA seized critical McLaren components after the Imola Grand Prix amid growing suspicions of illegal tyre manipulation. Well, the wait is over. The results are in, and it's not looking good for McLaren. What was once brushed off as clever engineering is now under serious fire, with mounting evidence suggesting that their tyre advantage wasn't just smart. It may have been strategically hidden from FIA oversight. What the FIA uncovered behind closed doors has stunned even veteran insiders, not just because of what McLaren was allegedly doing, but because of how long they may have been doing it unchecked. So what does this all mean for McLaren, and could this be the beginning of a full-blown tiregate meltdown? Something just doesn't add up. In a season where tyre management has defined winners and exposed pretenders, McLaren's ability to maintain peak performance, lap after lap in both qualifying sprints and race stints, has raised more than just eyebrows. It's triggered a full-blown investigation. What was once hailed as technical brilliance is now the centre of a deepening scandal. Behind the polished interviews and media smiles, the FIA is quietly zeroing in, and a silent storm is brewing that threatens to unravel one of the most meticulously engineered advantages of the hybrid era. What makes this different from your usual F1 controversy is the scope of the edge McLaren is alleged to have. Unlike an illegal wing, a flexible floor, or even the infamous DAS system, this isn't something you can point at with a camera or test with a deflection rig. The accusation is built on thermal patterns, tyre behaviour data, and a suspiciously perfect performance curve, all of which point to something hidden deep within the car's brake architecture. Rivals say McLaren has found a way to isolate the tyre from the worst of the car's thermal stress. This isn't just about quick outlaps or smart tyre prep, it's about systematic, sustained thermal control. Teams like Mercedes and Ferrari have had to dial back power and sacrifice strategy just to keep their tyres alive. Meanwhile, McLaren has sprinted through race stints with the kind of consistency that engineers dream of. Their race pace doesn't fall off, their tyres don't spiral, and crucially, their pit wall doesn't have to manage tyre life the way others do. That level of control is unheard of, and potentially unfair. While phase change materials are at the centre of suspicion, the story is deeper than just the use of a clever compound. It's about the lack of disclosure, the regulatory grey zones, and the deliberate ambiguity surrounding their systems. The FIA has rules requiring that all thermal systems directly or indirectly influencing aerodynamic or mechanical behaviour be declared, and that's where McLaren may find themselves cornered. According to sources close to the FIA's technical department, the issue isn't whether McLaren used PCM-style thermal regulators, it's whether they intentionally failed to report them. If the material was embedded within components listed as standard cooling architecture, but actually played an active role in heat regulation beyond its intended function, that would breach Article 2.5 of the technical regulations, which covers material declarations and performance influence. Another overlooked piece of this story is how the FIA's compliance inspections are typically structured. Most scrutineering focuses on aerodynamic components, power units, and flexible bodywork, but thermal regulation materials inside brake systems or wheel drums are harder to detect unless specifically tested for, which they usually aren't. That's why McLaren's alleged trick may have gone undetected for months. It's not that they hid something illegal, it's that they embedded it in an area no one was actively watching. If found guilty of breaching declaration protocols, McLaren's consequences may not be limited to technical disqualification. Rival teams are lobbying for post-race reviews, potentially stripping points from previous races where the system was used. Depending on how the FIA rules the intent and function of the components, this could lead to a retroactive reclassification of results. There's also growing tension in the paddock around how this affects tyre supplier Pirelli. Teams rely on shared tyre data and predicted degradation profiles based on average usage. If one team is secretly cooling or delaying heat transfer with an undeclared method, it could distort the development and feedback loop. In other words, it doesn't just help McLaren, it undermines the entire balance of the grid's tyre understanding. From a sporting perspective, the optics are even worse. Formula One is supposed to be about transparency and open competition, but if McLaren has been masking a technological edge through passive chemistry, exploiting a blind spot in scrutineering, it calls into question how many other teams are quietly doing the same. Engineers across the grid are now scrambling to investigate their own brake designs for similar applications, not necessarily to copy McLaren, but to ensure they're not left behind if the loophole remains open. All of this puts the FIA in a tough spot. If they rule harshly against McLaren, it could look like a crackdown on innovation, but if they go too soft, it will send a signal that manipulation manipulating tyre temperatures through undeclared thermal regulators is now fair game. That could lead to an arms race in PCM chemistry, with teams sourcing exotic compounds from aerospace firms or advanced materials labs, all in the name of passive cooling. And let's not forget the political dimension. McLaren has strong allies in commercial rights negotiations and a favourable media spotlight due to their recent resurgence. That could make the FIA's decision even more scrutinised, especially if Zak Brown, known for his aggressive defence strategies, spins the controversy into a PR war about innovation versus bureaucracy. The ripple effects could hit the 2026 regulations too. With a new chassis and power unit formula on the horizon, the FIA is under pressure to close all ambiguity before teams begin design work. That includes material science. Already, there are discussions about requiring full material declarations for all thermal and chemical compounds used in race-critical systems, including those previously considered structurally inert. Drivers have also begun to take notice. Off-record remarks from competitors point to growing frustration, particularly among those who've lost podium positions to McLaren in recent races. One senior figure said bluntly, "We're not racing the same race anymore." When they can go 10 laps longer on the same compound without degradation, that's not setup, that's science fiction. Another added, "This isn't clever tyre prep, it's chemical warfare." If McLaren is found guilty of breaching FIA regulations, the consequences could be nothing short of catastrophic for the team. The FIA has the authority to not only force an immediate removal of the suspected system, but also retroactively disqualify McLaren from previous races where the advantage was used. That means race results could be overturned, championship points wiped out, and their position in both the constructors' and drivers' standings drastically altered. In a season where every point counts, such a penalty could effectively end their title hopes and possibly shift the balance of the entire championship fight. But the damage wouldn't stop at the standings. McLaren's reputation, already scarred by past scandals like the 2007 Spygate controversy, would take another massive hit. What was once seen as a brilliant resurgence could now be tainted by accusations of deceit and manipulation. Rival teams would demand tighter regulations, and fans would be left questioning whether McLaren's performances were ever legitimate to begin with. Even if the FIA stops short of issuing race disqualifications, the introduction of a new technical directive could still cripple McLaren's competitiveness for the rest of the season. Removing the system could expose just how dependent their pace was on it, leaving them scrambling to adapt while their rivals surge forward. One thing is clear: silence won't save McLaren this time. As the scrutiny intensifies and the FIA closes in, the team must now choose between defiance and transparency. The days of mocking rivals with stunt water bottles are over. The next moves will need to be serious, deliberate, and, most of all, legal. McLaren may have believed they were walking a fine line, but it turns out that line wasn't just thin, it was invisible. And while the team may argue they were simply smarter than their competitors, Formula One has always punished those who exploit ambiguity at the cost of sporting parity. As the FIA prepares to act, one question remains: has McLaren outsmarted Formula One, or simply out-cheated it? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, goodbye for now.